All right. Chapter 14. In our own underground investigations, and whether there is something in the sky or not, we are in a hole in time, cavern of conventional science, walls that are dogmas from which drips ancient wisdom in a patter of slimy opinions, but we have heard a storm of data outside. Of being that march in the sky and of a beacon on the moon, another dark body crosses the sun. Somewhere near Melidia there is Canadading, and another stone falls from the sky at Irkutsk. Siberia, an unknown grain falls from an unknown world, and there are flashes in the sky when the planet Mars is near. In a farrago of lights and sounds and forms, I feel the presence of possible classifications that may thread a pattern of attempt to find out something. My attention is attracted by a streak of events that is beaded with little star-like points of light. First, we shall find out what we can as to the moon. In one of the numbers of the observatory, an eminent authority in some fields of research is quoted as to the probable distance of the moon. According to his determinations, the moon is 37 miles away. He explains most reasonably he is Mr. G.B. Shaw, but by conventional doctrine, the moon is 240,000 miles away. My own idea is that somewhere between determinations by a Shaw and determinations by a Newcomb, we could find many acceptances. I prefer questionable determinations myself, or at any rate examinations that end up with questions or considerable latitude. It may be that as to the volcanoes of the moon, we can find material for at least a seemingly intelligent question, if no statements are possible as to the size and the distance of the moon. The larger volcanoes of this earth are about 3 miles in diameter, though the craters of Haleakala, Hawaii, and Asosan, Japan, are 7 miles across. But the larger volcanoes of a relatively little moon are said to be 60 miles across, though several are said to be twice that size. And I should start off with just about the impression of disproportionality that I should have if someone should tell me of a pygmy with ears 5 feet long. Is there any somewhat good reason for thinking that the volcanic craters of the little moon are larger than, or particularly different in any other way from, the craters of this earth? If not, we have a direct unit of measurement according to which the moon is not 2,160, but about 100 miles in diameter. How far away does one suppose to be an object with something like that diameter and of the seeming size of the moon? The astronomers explained they argue that the gravitation must be less powerful upon the moon than upon this earth, and that therefore larger volcanic formations could have been cast up on the moon. We explained. We argue that volcanic force must be less powerful upon the moon than upon this earth, and that therefore larger volcanic formations could not have been cast up on the moon. The disproportionality that has impressed me has offended more conventional aesthetics than mine. Professor C, for instance, has tried to explain that the lunar formations are not craters but are effects of bombardment by vast meteors which sparred this earth for some reason not made clear. Viscid moon, meteor pops in, up splash walls and a central cone. If Professor C will jump in swimming someday, and then go back some weeks later to see how big a splash he made, he will have other ideas upon such supposed persistences. The moon would have to have been virtually liquid to fit his theory, because there is no partially embedded vast round meteors protruding anywhere. There have been lights like signals upon the moon. There are two conventional explanations: reflected sunlight and volcanic action. Of course, ultra-conventionalists do not admit that in our own times there has been even volcanic action upon the moon. Our instances will be of lights upon the dark part of the moon, and there are good reasons for thinking that our data do not relate to volcanic action. In volcanic eruptions upon this earth, the glow is so accompanied by great volumes of smoke that a clear, definite point of light would seem not to be the appearance from a distance. For Webb's account of a brilliant display of minute dots and streaks of light in the Mare Crisium, July 4th, 1832, see Astro Reg 20-165. I have records of half a dozen similar illuminations here in about 120 years, all of them when the Mare Crisium was in darkness. There can be no commonplace explanation for such spectacles, or they would have occurred oftener. Nevertheless, the Mare Crisium is a wide open region, and at times there may have been uncommon percolations of sunlight, and I shall list no more of these interesting events that seem to me to have been like carnivals upon the moon. December 22nd, 1835, the star-like light of Aristarchus, reported by Francis Bailey. See Proctor's Myths and Marvels, page 329. February 13th, 1836, in the western crater of Messier, according to Gruithuisen, two straight lines of light, between them a dark band that was covered with luminous points. Upon the nights of March 18th and 19th, 1847, large luminous spots were seen upon the dark part of the moon, and a general glow upon the upper limb by Reverend T. Rankin and Professor Cavalier. The whole shaded part of the disk seemed to be a mixture of lights and shades. Upon the night of the 19th, there was a similar appearance upon this earth, an aurora, according to the London newspapers. It looks as if both the moon and this earth were affected by the same illuminations, said to have been auroral. I offer this occurrence as indication that the moon is nearby, if the moon and earth could be so affected in common. But by signaling, I mean something like the appearance that was seen by Hodgson upon the dark part of the moon, night of December 11th, 1847, a bright light that flashed intermittently. Upon the next night, it was seen again. The oppositions of Mars occur once in about 2 years and 2 months. In conventional terms, the eccentricity of the orbit of Mars is greater than the eccentricity of the orbit of this Earth, and the part of its orbit that is traversed by this Earth in August is nearest the orbit of Mars. When this Earth is between Mars and the Sun, Mars is said to be in opposition, and this is the position of nearest approach. When opposition occurs in August, that is the most favorable opposition. After that, every 2 years and about 2 months, the oppositions are less favorable until the least favorable of all in February, after which favorableness increases up to the climactic opposition in August again. This is a cycle of changing proximities within a period of about 15 years. In October 1862, Lockyer saw a spot like a long train of clouds on Mars, and several days later, Secchi saw a spot on Mars. And if that were signaling, it is very meager material upon which to suppose anything. And May 8th through 20... and May 8th through the 22nd, 1873, white spots on Mars. But upon June 17th, 1873, 2 months after nearest approach, but still in the period of opposition of Mars, there was either an extraordinary occurrence or the extraordinariness is in our interpretation. See Rept. B.A. 1874-272, a luminous object came to this Earth and was seen and heard upon the night of June 17th, 1873, to explode in the sky of Hungary, Australia, and Bohemia. In the words of various witnesses, termed according to their knowledge, the object was seen seemingly coming from Mars or from the red star in the south, where Mars was at the time. Our data were collected by Dr. Gale. The towns of Rybnik and Ratibor, Upper Silesia, are 15 miles apart. Without parallax, this luminous thing was seen from these points to emerge and separate itself from the disk of the planet Mars. It so happens that we have a definite observation from one of these towns. At Rybnik, Dr. Sage was looking at Mars at the time he saw the luminous object apparently issue from the planet. There is another circumstance, and for its reception, our credulity or our enlightenment has been prepared. If this thing did not come from Mars, it came from the planet to the point where it exploded in about 5 seconds. From the point of explosion, the sound traveled in several minutes. We have a description from Dr. Sage that indicates that a bolt of some kind, perhaps electric, did shoot from Mars and that the planet quaked with the shock. Dr. Sage was looking attentively at the planet Mars when he thus saw the meteor apparently issued from it, and the planet appear at and the planet appear as if it was breaking up and dividing into two parts. Some of the greatest surprises in commonplace experience are discoveries of the nearness of that which was supposed to be inaccessibly remote. It seems that the moon is close to this Earth because of the phenomenon of Earthshine. The same appearance has been seen upon the planet Venus. If upon the moon it is light reflecting from this Earth and back to this Earth, what is it upon Venus? It is some unexplained optical illusion, says Newcomb. For this list of more than 20 observations upon this illumination of Venus, see Rept. BA 1873-404. It is our expression that the phenomenon is unexplained because it does not indicate that Venus is millions of miles closer to this Earth than Venus should be. Unknown objects have been seen near Venus. There were more than 30 observations in the 18th century, not relating to so many different periods, however. Our own earliest datum is Webb's observation of May 22nd, 1823. I know of only one astronomer who has supposed that these observations could relate to a Venusian satellite pronouncedly visible sometimes, and then for many years being invisible. Something else will have to be thought of. If these observations and others that we shall have be accepted, they relate to unknown bulks that have, from outer space, gone to Venus and have been in temporary suspension near the planet, even though the shade of Sir Isaac Newton would curdle at the suggestion. If acceptably from our outer space something could go to the planet Venus, one is not especially startled with the idea that something could sail out from the planet Venus. Visit this Earth conceivably. In the Rept. BA 1852-835, it is said that early in the morning of September 11th, 1852, several persons at Fair Oaks, Staffordshire, had seen in the eastern sky a luminous object. It was first seen at 4:15 a.m. It appeared and disappeared several times until 4:45 a.m. when it became finally invisible. Then at almost the same place in the sky, Venus was seen, having risen above the eastern horizon. These persons sent the records of their observations to Lord Wriothesley, an astronomer whose observatory was at Wolverhampton. There is published a letter from Lord Wriothesley, who says that at first he had thought that the suppositiously unknown object was Venus, with perhaps an extraordinary halo, but that he had received from one of the observers a diagram giving such a position relatively to the moon that he hesitated so to identify. It was in the period of nearest approach to this Earth by Venus, and since inferior conjunction, Venus had been a morning star. If this thing in the sky were not Venus, the circumstances are that an object came close to this Earth, perhaps, and for a while was stationary, as if waiting for the planet Venus to appear above the eastern horizon, then disappearing, whether to sail to Venus or not. We think that perhaps this thing did come close to this Earth because it was, it seems, seen only in the local sky of Fair Oaks. However, if, according to many of our data, professional astronomers have missed extraordinary appearances at reasonable hours, we can conclude much from what was not reported by them after 4 o'clock in the morning. I do not know whether this is the origin of the convention or not, but this is the first note I have upon the now standardized explanation that when a luminous object is seen in the sky at the time of the nearest approach by Venus, it is Venus attracting attention by her great brilliance, exciting persons unversed in astronomic matters into thinking that a strange object had visited this Earth. When reports are definite as to motions of a seemingly sailing or exploding luminous thing, astronomers say that it was a fire balloon. In the report BA 1856-54, it is said that, according to Mrs. Ailing and friends, in a letter to Lord Wriothesley, a bright object had been seen in the sky of Petworth, Sussex, night of August 11th, 1855. According to description, it rose from behind hills in the distance at 11:30. It was a red body, or it was a red appearing construction because from it were projections like spokes of a wheel, or they were stationary rays in the words of the description. Like a red moon, it rose slowly and diminished slowly, remaining visible 1 hour and a half. Upon August 11, 1855, Venus was 2 weeks from primary greatest brilliance, inferior conjunction occurring upon September 30th. The thing could not have been Venus ascending in the sky at this time of night. An astonishing thing, like a red moon, perhaps with spokes like a wheel's, might, if reported from nowhere else, be considered something that came from outer space so close to this Earth that it was visible only in a local sky, except that it might have been visible in other places, and even 11:30 at night may be an unheard of hour for astronomers who specialize upon sunspots for a reason that is clearing up to us. Of course, an ordinary fire balloon could be extraordinarily described. June 8th, 1868. I have not the exact time, but one does suspect that it was early in the evening, an object that was reported from Radcliffe Observatory, Oxford. It looked like a comet, but in as much as it was reported only from Radcliffe, it may have been in the local sky of Oxford. It seemed to sail in the sky. It moved and changed its course. At first it was stationary, then it moves westward, then southward, then turning north, visible 4 minutes. According to a correspondent in the Birmingham Gazette, May 28, 1868, there had been an extraordinary illumination upon Venus. Some nights before, a red spot visible for a few seconds. Night of May 27th. In the issue of the Gazette of June 1st, someone else writes that he saw this light appearing and disappearing upon Venus. Upon March 15th, Browning had seen something that looked like a little shaft of light from Venus. And upon April 6th, Webb had seen a similar appearance. At the time of the appearance at Oxford, Venus was in the period of nearest approach, inferior conjunction, July 16th, 1868. I think myself that there was one approximately great wise astronomer. He was Tycho Brahe. For many years, he would not describe what he saw in the sky because he considered it beneath his dignity to write a book. The dignified or more or less literary, or sometimes altogether too literary, astronomers who do write books uncompromisingly say that when a luminous object is said to have moved to greater degree than could be considered illusory in a local sky of this earth, it is a fire balloon. It is not possible to find in the writings of astronomers who so explain mention of the object that was seen by Coggia, night of August 1st, 1871. It seems that this thing was not far away and did appear only in a local sky of this earth. And if it did come from outer space, how it could have bordered this earth if this earth moves at a rate of 19 miles a second or 1 mile a second is hard to explain. That why Proctor and Hind, with their passionate itch for explaining, never took the matter up. I don't know. Upon August 1st, 1871, an unknown luminous object was seen in the sky of Marcellus by Coggia. According to description, it was a magnificent red object. It appeared at 10:43 p.m. and moved eastward slowly until 10:52:30. Stopped, moved northward and again at 10:59:30. Stationary. It turned eastward again at 11:03:20 within 3 weeks. At 11:03:20 disappeared or fell behind the horizon. Upon this night, Venus was within 3 weeks of primary greatest brilliance, inferior conjunction occurring upon September 25th, 1871.